What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today is Tuesday. We're recording this on Tuesday, April 25th, officially 2 days away from the NFL draft. My name is Eric. That's my co-host, Will. How are you feeling this morning, man?
I'm feeling excited, man. Ready to talk about, just some of these future prospects. We're getting closer and closer to the draft, so there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, 100%. I'm also hyped for the draft. But today we're doing something a little bit different. We've been talking about this 2023 class for months now. It's been quite some time. Still excited about it. Still really looking forward to getting into it. But we're going to get away from what we've been doing, get away from the repetitive, and we're going to look to the future. We're going 2024 rookie mock draft today. And so hopefully this can kind of give you guys an idea of if you're in mock drafts this year, if you want to trade back or trade out for 2024 firsts. This will give you an idea of the name value and the type of players that you can potentially get at each pick. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Will, you have the 101. You ready to start us off?
Yes, sir. This is probably the easiest pick of the whole draft, at least as of right now. It's Mr. Heisman winner himself, Mr. Caleb Williams. 6'1", 216. He's just got the frame. He's got the athleticism. He's got the throwing power. He's got the arm. Like last year, I believe he threw, 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions? Something like that. It was a crazy ratio, maybe 34-3. 10 rushing touchdowns as well, so he does have that upside, that mobility. He's just everything that you would really want in a prospect, and he's got a huge ceiling, especially if he were to step into the NFL and perform at the same level, even a similar level that he is right now in college. And it's looking like he's probably going to repeat again next year and win the Heisman again as of right now. So, yeah, it's just he's got the it factor. He's one of those guys that is one of those generational talents. So, if there's ever a 101 that you want to get, it's Caleb Williams, I feel like.
For sure. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, generational, transcendent type talent. Like you said, he's got all the arm talent in the world. He's got the athleticism. He can throw on the run, all the different arm angles. He excels outside of structure. He's like the king of backyard football.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside of some like crazy unforeseen circumstances, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft next year and will be the consensus 101 in rookie drafts as well. I'd honestly be willing to bet that he'd be at least like a top 8 startup pick come this time next year.
Absolutely, yeah, because he's one of those guys. He's here to stay, and as soon as he touches NFL grass, he's going to get playing time. It's just a matter of time at this point.
Yeah. All right, so that's the 101. Set it in stone. Unless something crazy happens, that's who it's going to be. You could probably make an argument for 2 different guys here at the 102. But I am going to take Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State. To me, I think he's probably the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's on Jamar's level, but he's damn close. He was a highly ranked high school prospect. He has alpha size, great athleticism, and he's been highly productive so far at OSU. He's also got Hall of Fame Colts wide receiver Marvin Harrison Sr. as his dad. Not that, we need to read too much into the Hall of Fame bloodlines, but still, it's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, he should have won the Biletnikoff Award last year. He kind of got robbed by Jalen Hyatt, but he's got a chance to win it again this year. And similar to Caleb Williams, outside of something crazy happening, he's pretty much a lock to be a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft. And according to Ohio State's offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach, Brian Hartline, he's the best wide receiver that he's ever coached.
No, that's honestly amazing to hear. Like you said, he's got the pedigree, and you can't read into that too much because we've had people with pedigree not work out in the league. Looking at you, Thaddeus Moss. But
damn,
I mean, it's a fact though.
It's true. You're right.
But this guy has gone and he's proven that, yeah, he's one of these guys that's great at football. And at the size he's at, 6'4", 205, yeah, that guy's a fucking beast. So I'm really excited to see him at the next level. And he's been performing, like you said, he's got one of the best wide receiver coaches of all time. Well, not wide receiver coaches, he's OC, but one of the best wide receiver mentors ever in Brian Hartline. And he's been able to bring that out of him. So it's awesome to see.
For sure.
And at the 103, the other player that Eric was alluding to, it is the quarterback out of North Carolina, Mr. Drake May. Especially because I don't know if we mentioned this, but we're going to be working from like a super flex tight end premium type of
Yes.
setup right here.
Yes.
But obviously quarterback's extremely valuable in super flex, and Drake May, he's one of those guys you're hoping is going to break this sort of UNC curse we've got going as of late. That we haven't had the best of luck with UNC quarterbacks, but he's looking like he is the real deal. I think a lot of people forget that Sam Howell, when he was coming into his junior year, he was one of those top prospects. Stuff kind of
Yeah.
dropped for him senior year, but at that time, he was a first-round pick before his senior year. He obviously dropped since then. But Drake May is a lot better than Sam Howell was at that point. So to even compare the two isn't even really that fair because Drake May is a lot better. In terms of just athleticism and his accuracy, all of that, it's just he's got everything. He's got all the tools that he would need. He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. He's got athleticism to also match it. It's just unfortunate that there's another guy in the class named Caleb Williams. Otherwise, he would be the 101 in this draft class.
Yeah, I think we can talk about it once we wrap up the entire first round, because I know we'll do just a general, our feelings on this class as a whole. But at the top, in my opinion, Caleb Williams and Drake May would be the 101 and 102 in this year's class fairly easily if they were in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, love that at the 103. Drake May he's got the prototypical size, great accuracy, arm strength. He's shown to be pretty athletic too. He's gotten it done on the ground at UNC so far. Not quite as dynamic as Caleb, but he can definitely get it done. He's also pretty clutch. He had 42 big time throws, which was the most of any quarterback in the Power 5 last year. The next closest had 29, so he led that by a wide margin. Also did that while having a really low turnover worthy play rate. So yeah, I think he's a really clean prospect, and I think he could be. He's not Joe Burrow. I'm not saying that, but I think he's in a similar type of mold in where he's like sneaky athletic and a great passer. So yeah, love that at the 103.
Hell yeah.
So we'll go to the 104, and like Will said, this is a super flex tight end premium. I forgot to mention at the top. But with that being said, I think I am gonna go tight end here, and I'm gonna take Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. Probably the best tight end prospect to come out since Kyle Pitts. He's been the best tight end in all of college football since he stepped on the field his freshman year. The only negative that I can see about him is that he's a little undersized, 6'4", 230. But that doesn't really bother me considering he's just an oversized wide receiver. Like, he's a fantastic route runner, great hands, wins at the catch point, dynamic and physical runner in space. I consistently watched him burn angles and run by DBs on his tape, so he's got the speed. He even featured as a runner at Georgia, which was crazy. Like, he took end arounds and plays that you would typically see drawn up for the speedy, shifty wide receivers on a team. On 13 rushing attempts that he's had, he went for 165 yards, which is 12.7 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. So he's just an athlete. And similar to Pitts, you'll be able to line him up anywhere, any position, whoever's guarding him, it's going to be a mismatch. So this kid's incredible, and I can't wait to see him at the next level.
Absolutely. He's one of those guys, like, if there's a Georgia tight end that you guys want, it's not Darnell Washington, it is Brock Bowers. Okay?
Yes.
Because Brock Bowers had more catches his freshman year than Darnell Washington had his whole college
by a wide
career.
margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's one of those guys, like Eric was saying, he's a transcendent tight end. He's one of these guys that has that Kyle Pitts level ceiling in terms of his receiving ability. He's not the best blocker in the world, but it really doesn't matter when you got a guy as explosive as he is, as athletic as he is, as great of a catcher as he is. He's just one of those awesome tight end prospects that you'd like to get a piece of. Like I'm not saying he's gonna be the next Travis Kelce, but he very much has that sort of ceiling.
Very possible. Yeah. I'm excited to see what you do here at the 105. This one would have been a difficult one for me. There's 3 or 4 guys that are in the running for this pick, so I'll let you go for it.
I thought about this one a lot because obviously we knew what we were gonna do yesterday, so I had to kind of think about it a little bit. And I think I'm gonna go with Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, the running back. I was stuck between him and Raheem Sanders, and I gave Travion the edge just by a little bit because of well, one age. Trayvon's younger, I believe. Isn't he?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can
Yeah,
check.
I believe he's younger. But, he struggled a little bit with injuries last year and missed the college football playoffs. But before that, 1,248 yards, 15 touchdowns. He also had 27 receptions, and 312 yards, so also showing off that receiving ability as well. And he's just a very, very dynamic player himself. In terms of his athleticism and elusiveness, he is a high-end prospect in terms of that. He's very good at dodging tackles, very good at running through tackles. And I feel like this season, he's got an opportunity to bounce back. He could even end up rising up draft boards a little bit more than he is right here. But I think he has a very high ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Travion Henderson. I looked it up. I didn't see their actual birth date, but I think both him and Raheem
Are about
are
the same
currently
age,
20.
about 20.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't see the month, so I'm not sure how far apart they are in that regard. But currently, they're both 20 years old.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, love Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. He was talked about in the same realm as Bijan following his incredible freshman season. And then, like you said, he dealt with a lot of injuries this year. I think he had two separate foot injuries and an undisclosed knee injury that severely limited him and eventually led to them shutting him down near the end of the season. For me, it's kind of a toss-up between him and Raheem as far as who would be the RB1 in this class. But I think, like you said, if Travion does have that bounce-back season and returns to that freshman season form or exceeds that, he's probably the RB1 in this class for me.
Yeah, I believe that too.
So I like that a ton at the 105. You're leaving me in a tough position here because if I was at the 105, I was deciding between positions. And I'm still having to do that here. But I think I'm going to go back to the wide receiver pool and take Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. A lot of Ohio State guys in the top 6 here so far. But I really love this guy. He's probably going to be overshadowed by Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's still one of the better Ohio State wide receivers that we've seen in recent years. He was the top ranked high school wide receiver recruit in his class, actually ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. He worked primarily out of the slot last year, but showed the ability to get it done at all different positions outside as well. Produced at a high level with over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and a 26% target share while sharing the field with Marvin Harrison. And I think he's probably better than Olave was. I don't know that I'd be willing to say he's better than Garrett Wilson, but in that same territory, in that same talent level of that group of guys. And obviously we've seen what they've gone on to do at the next level. So really like Egbuka, and he's going to be my 106 here.
Yeah, I love that pick. Like you said, the only reason he's being overshadowed as much as he is because he's playing on the team with the wide receiver 1 right now with Marvin Harrison Jr. and still being able to get a 26% target share with that kind of target competition is honestly incredible. And dude is a burner. He's a burner.
Yeah.
I think he's expected to run like low 4.3s, I believe. Like if he does that, yeah, he's just amazing. He's an amazing prospect.
Yeah.
So taking a look at the 107. I'm going back to the quarterback pool, and I'm looking at Quinn Ewers. I'm looking at Quinn Ewers here.
Love it.
I like him as a prospect. It's weird his spot in college right now because he's at Texas, and we all know who's coming to Texas next year, Mr. Arch Manning.
Well, he's there now.
Well, yeah, he is there now. That spring game was a little crazy, but
Yeah.
But
I don't think he's quite ready. It's all right.
So he's going to be in a little bit of competition. Who knows who's going to be the starter by this year? It could be Arch, could be Quinn. Quinn could transfer, but
This year, it's Quinn, bro. It's definitely Quinn.
You think it's Quinn?
I'm sure of it.
Okay. All right. So Quinn Ewers.
I'll put money on it.
Okay. All right. I believe you. We'll see. We'll see. But if Quinn Ewers, he's one of those guys that is up there in terms of recruits with Caleb Williams and Drake May, but he does need to work on his decision making quite a bit, I feel like. But that's something I feel like a lot of these prospects have to do at the college level. But he was a very highly rated quarterback coming out of high school into college. He's still pretty highly rated now. He just needs to work on his polish, and I believe he has a lot of upside. In terms of comparisons, there have been a lot of, I've seen doing research, a lot of Patrick Mahomes comparisons, which don't let that get you too far ahead. But just in terms of arm talent, in terms of mobility, just things he can get done, he can get a lot of throws on the field done. He just needs to work on his polish, his decision making, stuff of that nature. But he's one of those guys who, if he performs this year, he could also rise up draft boards quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. He actually was the #1 high school recruit in the country in 2021, and was given a perfect prospect score by 24/7 Sports.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the highest of the high pedigree. He initially committed to Ohio State, but then sat behind Fields and Stroud, and eventually transferred to Texas, like you said, for last season. He started with, I don't know if you guys saw it, but you can go back and watch. They played Alabama in the second week of the season last year, and he was lighting it up in the first quarter before he got just pile drived into the ground and injured his shoulder. Yeah. And so he dealt with that for the rest of the season, along with a couple other nagging injuries that I think held him back pretty significantly. And so, yeah, he's in for a monster bounce back. I think Texas has loaded up. You know, they lost Bijan, but they added another really good wide receiver prospect in Jonte Cook. They have Xavier Worthy, who we'll talk about potentially later in this draft. They have Steve Sarkisian as their, is he their offensive coordinator or their head coach?
I have to look it up to see. I'm not really sure.
One of the two, but either way, he's the play caller. So I'm pretty excited to see what Texas does this upcoming season, and I think it could mean big things for Quinn Ewers. All right. So now we're at the 108, right?
Yep, 108.
All right. So I am going to go back to the running back pool, and I am going to take the guy that we've alluded to a couple times in Raheem Rocket Sanders. As of right now, he is actually my RB1 in this class. Obviously, we got a whole year of college football and a lot of time. A lot of things could change. But as of right now, I have him as the RB1, and I think he's the total package. He's got great size at 6'2", 227. And I've actually heard that he's added some weight, so he might be even bigger than that at this point. But he's got the long speed, the power, the elusiveness as a runner. And he's also a converted wide receiver. So he has surprisingly good hands for a running back of his stature. As far as production, he put up over 1,700 scrimmage yards and 12 touchdowns in the SEC last year. And he did it on an Arkansas team that wasn't very effective throwing the ball. So teams stacked the box against them, and he still got it done. So just prototypical size, if not, bigger than prototypical size. And just a really well-rounded prospect out of Raheem. So I'm going to go ahead and take him at the 108.
No, I like Raheem too. Like you said, he's 225, 6'2", which is just a great size. He had 16 runs of 20-plus yards in 2022, so that's the second most out of all the Power 5 running backs. So he is someone who has that kind of breakaway sort of speed to him as well at that size, which is awesome to see as well. So I do like Raheem Sanders as well.
Hell yeah.
And taking a look at the 109, I'm going to go with Braylon Allen, staying with the running backs. Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin.
Yes,
so this is the guy I was thinking of earlier, so I'm sorry for that mix-up. He's the young guy. He's 19, turns 20 next year. By the time he goes into the NFL, he'll be 20 then.
Yes.
But
he'll be 20 for, assuming he declares. He'll be 20 for the entirety of his rookie NFL season, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is
wild how young he is.
Shows he had a really early breakout age, and that's something you love to see in these college prospects for sure. Rushed for over 1,200 yards in each of his first 2 seasons at Wisconsin, but the only negative about Braylon Allen is not too much in the receiving game. I believe his freshman year he had like 8 catches, sophomore year 13, so he can catch, but it's just not something that's really a focus of his game. And his rushing style really reminds me of like a Derrick Henry type player in terms of like how he runs. He runs kind of violently. That's really all I've got for him. I think he has I think as a runner, he has a lot of potential. He would have to work on receiving quite a bit, but as a pure runner himself, I think he's one of the best in the class, and I love this guy. He's absolutely massive at 6'2", 240. He's fucking huge. Like you mentioned, Derrick Henry. He's a similar type of body type, and he's also a home run hitter. He breaks off a ton of really big runs. I think he needs to work on kind of consistency in terms of his decision making and vision behind the line of scrimmage. But like we said, he's really young, and also he converted from being a linebacker in high school, so he's still learning the position as well.
So he's got a lot of room left to grow, and I think that if he does develop and get with the right coaching staff, he could be something really, really special. So yeah, super excited to see what he can do. You mentioned the pass catching. I don't want to give him too much of a pass, but Wisconsin historically hasn't really passed their running backs much.
Mm.
Um, Even like Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor, I think they had their highest reception totals in their final seasons there, and we're talking like low 20s. So if Braylon Allen can do that this year, then I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But if he doesn't reach that level, then yeah, it's obviously not a strong suit of his game.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So we are at the 110 now, right?
Yes, 110.
110. Okay. So I think this is kind of a tier break for the class. Obviously Caleb Williams kind of in a tier by himself. I think Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., and in tight end premium leagues, maybe you can lump in Brock Bowers in the next tier. Then all of the rest of the guys that we've talked about, I think, are probably in a group. And it starts to fall off here just a little bit, in my opinion, towards the end. So at the 110, I'm going to go back to the running back pool once again, and I'm going to take Will Shipley, the running back out of Clemson. He's really well-rounded back. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily great at anything, but I think he's good at everything. He did break out during his freshman season, and then followed that up with over 1,400 scrimmage yards, 15 touchdowns, and 38 receptions last year. I'm really excited to see how he's used now that Clemson has brought in Garrett Riley as their new offensive coordinator. He's Lincoln Riley's brother and was the OC for TCU last year, and he helped them get all the way to the college football title game. So excited to see the usage that he gets in that type of offense. Also, I don't want to hear any Christian McCaffrey comparisons just because he's a white running back, but I do think that he can be used more dynamically as a receiver than he has been so far, and he hasn't been a slouch in that regard. So yeah, I like Will Shipley here.
It's an interesting comparison there, man. I don't know.
I'm not making it.
I don't know.
I'm saying don't make it.
I don't know, man. You put it in my head, and now I'm like, ooh, it's
No,
kind of a little tempting. But no, I like that pick a lot. I took a look into Will Shipley a little bit last night. I do like him as a prospect. I do think he is one of those more dynamic players, like you said. It's just a matter of they need to use him more like that to show that he can do it. But yeah, I think he can, honestly.
Yeah.
And taking a look at the 111, I think this is where we're going to go with Xavier Worthy, someone we mentioned earlier, wide receiver out of Texas. He was actually looking to be like the wide receiver one of this class until Marvin Harrison Jr. took over. But because he had a very good dominant freshman campaign. But after that, his production kind of dipped off just a little bit, but not a concerning amount, obviously, because we're still picking him in the first round. He is still. You feel like it's a concerning amount that it dipped off?
I think there's context that can be provided for it. I think it can be explained away, but I mean, it was a pretty significant dip.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if it comes back this year. Hopefully it does.
Yeah.
If he returns even somewhat back to what he was freshman year, I think he's still a great prospect. But
for sure,
we'll see. But in terms of where he is right now and how I see him, and based off that freshman year, I think that an early breakout age, I think he could get back to it. He's a thinner deep threat as well. We've kind of seen those rise to prominence as of lately. But I feel like he is better than like receivers like this year, like Jordan Addison. I think he is a little bit better than people like that. Not as good as Devonta Smith, but
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Smitty was a different level, bro.
Yeah, Smitty was a dog. But in terms of just prospects himself, most likely going to have around 4.3 speed as well. Definitely a deep threat, elite deep route running. And I just think that the hype is sort of slowed down for him, but he still is a great prospect.
Yeah, I'm really, really interested to see what he can do this year. That's going to change a lot of narratives for me. I'm a little bit down on him, at least comparatively speaking to you, I think. He did have one of the best freshman seasons we've seen from a wide receiver in recent history. It was really, really impressive. And the context that I was alluding to, I think he did deal with a broken hand for a portion of the season last year and poor quarterback play because, like we said, Quinn Ewers was hurt for a lot of the year, and his backup Hudson Card wasn't nearly the same quarterback.
Yeah.
So his production plummeted. You like to see, a guy kind of ride that high off of a freshman year and improve into his sophomore year, but he actually fell off and was worse production wise. But I do agree he's a fast, explosive downfield playmaker. I think he does need to work on his hands a little bit. There was quite a few drops. I don't think drops are a sticky stat necessarily, but some pretty crucial and important drops on his tape. But yeah, if he bounces back to anything like he was year one, he's probably a round one NFL talent and certainly deserving of a first round draft pick and rookie drafts as well.
Absolutely. You do want a wide receiver that can catch, so that is something he's got to clean up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I get to round it out here at the 112. There's a few names that I'm interested in. We can talk about some honorable mention guys if you want to afterwards, but I am going to go with another wide receiver that I think is kind of in the running for that wide receiver 3 spot with Xavier Worthy, and that's Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU. I think, like you said, and I think the general consensus is that Xavier Worthy is probably ahead of him in most people's wide receiver ranks. But so far, very early on in the process, I actually prefer Malik Neighbors. I think he has better size, better contested catchability. He's better after the catch, and probably just as explosive of a downfield threat, just from what I've seen on his tape so far. He also dealt with bad quarterback play at LSU, so his raw numbers aren't great, but he did put up over 1,000 yards last season and actually outproduced Kayshon Boutte last year as well. So I think he's pretty exciting. Not that I need to continue to compare them because we'll see what happens next year, but Xavier Worthy, we're talking about, he's like, what, 165? Something like that. Like, he's really skinny.
Very skinny.
Malik Neighbors, I think, is more like 190, 195. So just more of that kind of prototypical size that you'd like to see from an outside receiver.
Absolutely. Like you said, he stepped up when Kayshon Boutte kind of struggled last year. Yeah. So just being able to do that, get over 1,000 yards, it's awesome to see out of a prospect. And yeah, I really do like him a lot as a prospect as well. I kind of had to pick between, I was right between him and Xavier Worthy myself. So what you said between those two competing for that wide receiver 3 spot, definitely true, because I was stuck between the two of them.
For sure. All right, so that rounds out our first round. Do you have any guys that come to mind immediately as far as mentions, people that were close to making it?
I do have one, and that is Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, the running back.
Yes.
6'1", 204, so pretty prototypical size for a running back. He's right there on that cusp of being like featured back size, I feel like.
He's a little skinny because like 6'1", and to be just over 200 pounds, like the frame is a little skinny. If he was like 5'10", and that weight, it'd be just fine. But either way, it's not concerning. Yeah.
But the thing that I love to see is that he is involved in the passing game as well in terms of, 20 catches, 200 yards his freshman year. Sort of tailed off a little bit his sophomore year, but hoping they can get back up there. But he does have another great running back in that backfield with him as well, in Blake Corum. But the fact that he is able to produce at the level that he is with another excellent running back there with him, also producing at a high level, I really do like Donovan Edwards as a prospect. So he is one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, he was heavily in consideration there at the end of the draft for me. I do think he's probably the best receiving back, at least among the top prospects in this class. Michigan used him at times as like a legitimate downfield receiving weapon, so that was really good to see. Runs decent routes. I think he's a natural pass catcher. Like I mentioned, just a slightly skinny at 6'1", 204, but not bad size at all. But he did show the ability to handle a sizable rushing workload when his teammate, like you mentioned, Blake Corum, went down with an injury late last season. In the final 3 games of the season, Edwards went for 216, 185, and 119 rushing yards on 22, 25, and 23 carries, respectively. So those are big numbers for a guy that you might think is slightly undersized. And those were against legitimate rushing defenses as well. I don't expect him to be a workhorse like the top 3 backs in this class at the next level, but I could certainly see him being a 1A or a 1B in a committee and getting the more valuable touches as a receiver.
Absolutely, and he's already used to working in the committee as well, so it is nice to have that kind of experience coming into the league. And also multiple 75-yard touchdown runs against Ohio State. That's nothing to short. There's nothing to shake a stick at, for sure.
He was ripping them up, dude.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of names just to mention to put on you guys' radar. People that will probably go in the second round, or things could change. They could be first round guys. I'm not going to go in depth, but I'm just going to list them. Honorable mention at the quarterback position: Kyle McCord out of Ohio State, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan, Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, and Bo Nix out of Oregon.
Bo Nix, baby.
I smiled because he was such a high pedigree guy coming out of high school. We thought he was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Had a horrendous start to his college career, but he's kind of climbed back up a little bit since he's gotten to Oregon. So we'll see what he can do. Running backs, Trey Benson out of Florida State. Really like his tape. Blake Corum, like we mentioned, out of Michigan. Jace McClellan from Alabama. Wide receivers, Mario Williams from USC, Ja'Cory Brooks from Alabama, Troy Franklin out of Oregon, Rome Odunze out of Washington, and Keon Coleman from Michigan State. And at the tight end position, Jatavion Sanders from Texas and Jaheim Bell from Florida State. He's just recently transferred from South Carolina, I believe. Any comments on any of those guys? Any favorites from that list or anything?
Not off the top of my head. Obviously, out of the quarterbacks, like you said, Bo Nix. Dart also was somebody I was looking at a little bit. I still need to do a lot more research on the 2024 class, to be honest with you. But having all these guys on the radar, these are all names I've heard. I just need to look into them more. But yeah, these are guys that you guys should definitely be looking into because they are producing. This class is looking like, where do you see the value in this class? Primarily, because I know this year value is found in probably the receivers. There's some running back value in this class, but it's gotten shakier and shakier as the weeks have gone along. And obviously there's some
2023.
Yeah, in 2023 class. And obviously the top of the quarterback class is good, and then it sort of tails off once you get to the Will Levis and Hendon Hookers of the class. But how do you feel about this one?
For 2024, I think it's anchored by the quarterbacks and the running backs. We have the very top end talent in Marvin Harrison and Brock Bowers at those positions. But I think the strength of the class is in the quarterback. You got Caleb, you got Drake May, both guys that I think would be the 101 in this year's class. You got Quinn Ewers, like you talked about, who, if he bounces back, could be up in that top 5 conversation. And then the other guys that I mentioned in honorable mention could also make some noise depending on where they get drafted. And then, the running backs, I don't necessarily think we have a Bijan level running back.
But that's like a once in a blue moon type of deal anyways, you know?
Yeah. But honestly, like I mentioned, Travion Henderson, after his freshman year, was talked about in that same regard. But him, Raheem Sanders, and Braylon Allen, I don't think they're too far off from that kind of tier. And then there's also a lot more depth behind them as well. So that's where I see the strength of the 24 class.
Oh, okay. I feel that. And in terms, I feel like this is a class that you do want to be a part of in terms of drafts. You definitely want those first round picks in this draft, especially if you're looking for quarterbacks, like Eric said, or if you're looking for running backs, like Eric said. So in terms of value and in terms of players that are in the league now, say you wanted to trade into the first, you wanted to acquire 2024 first, you're our resident trade guy. So I'm really going to you for this. Where do you see the value at, and sort of like, so we can break it down in terms of early first round, mid first round, and late first round. How do you see the value stacking up if someone was trying to trade for picks to try to acquire assets?
Yeah, so putting me on the spot a little bit, but I think I'm relatively prepared. I want to pull up Keep Trade Cut just to get what the kind of market value is, but I have ideas off the top of my head. But pulling up Keep Trade Cut, the kind of names for like an early 2024 first, the names going around that are like Christian McCaffrey, T. Higgins, Kyler Murray, Devonta Smith. I think that's warranted. I think, McCaffrey is probably the RB1, just as not Dynasty necessarily, but as far as going into this season, he's probably the RB1. T. Higgins and Devonta Smith, probably like low end wide receiver ones. If you can get a Caleb Williams, a Marvin Harrison Jr., a Brock Bowers, a Drake May for that price, I think that's probably a good spot. I wouldn't change too much as far as my evaluation in terms of like how Keep Trade Cut has that ranked. Let's see. What are your thoughts about that? While I go check to see where they have the mid first.
No, I do. I agree with what you were saying for like the higher end first. Obviously, we got to go through the season to see how picks are going to fall out for people and where they're going to end up landing. But
Yeah.
like you said, I think that Devonta Smith, T. Higgins range for like an early first is a good price to pay for a Caleb Williams, someone who's going to be on your team for years, performing at a high
Yeah.
level. In terms of like a mid round first, it's probably going to fall into that like high wide receiver 2, low end running back 1 sort of range, I feel like.
That's exactly what we're looking at. Yeah, the
Yeah.
names going around on Keep Trade Cut, going around the mid 24 first is like Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, Najee Harris.
Yeah.
So you hit the nail on the head there.
And then in terms of low end first round picks, what do you think about that one?
Well, before we get there, in terms of those names, compared to what we just talked about as the mid 2024 first round picks,
I
how do you compare the value?
I would trade a Najee Harris for an Emeka or a Travion Henderson or a Rocket Sanders or any of those
Like,
guys in a heartbeat.
No question.
No question
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah, the early first, I think that value range kind of made sense. Obviously, if that turns into the 101, it jumps higher than that, but it's not a guarantee. But for a mid first, I'm absolutely trading any of those guys that we just mentioned for a mid 2024 first.
Absolutely.
So we're in agreement there. Let's find where they have a late 2024 first ranked. On Keep Trade Cut, we're looking at guys like Will Levis, J.K. Dobbins, Jared Goff, Zach Charbonnet. What are your thoughts on that?
So I feel like once we get down to that, and you got those low end first, and you're trading away players like Zach Charbonnet, especially depending on landing spots, because it's all going to depend on that at the end of the day. But I feel like that's when where you're kind of doing 1-for-1 swaps at that point. You're just kind of trading for your team's needs, maybe trying to acquire a player that you need in another position. But in terms of value itself, I feel like that one's more even than say the early first or mid first.
Yeah, and I think so far, and obviously a lot is going to change. We got a whole year to go. There's going to be risers, late fallers, all sorts of stuff. But as of right now, today, I think this class is fairly top heavy. And so, like we mentioned, we got to around the 110 in the 2024 mock, and I said it's kind of a teardrop off. So once you get to that point, like I do think it's probably similar value to those players on Keep Trade Cut that are going around that point, but you're also just risking more uncertainty. So I don't know that I would make that trade immediately 1-for-1 right now. That might be a waiting game, or do that with like a little bit extra on top if you can get it.
Yeah, I completely agree, because it also depends on how those guys perform that were in that range this year, because a lot of those, like you named right there, between Will Levis and Zach Charbonnet, have not even landed on an NFL team yet. So we don't even know what they're going to do. You could very well, Zach Charbonnet could land somewhere like the Bengals and have an amazing season,
Yeah.
So it all depends on what happens, really. But in terms of 1-for-1 swaps, like you said, you're just trading for more uncertainty at that point. And it's not really the smartest thing to do at this point.
Yeah. All right. And the last thing that I kind of want to do, which I kind of hate doing, but I think it's important. I want to compare the 2024 class to 2023. I feel like there's just a typical hype cycle that happens every year. You look ahead and you say, oh, next year's class looks great. It looks amazing. It looks better than this year's class. And then as you get closer, and we saw this with 2023, it did the same thing when we were in 2022 talking about 23. As you get closer to the draft, as people kind of get tired of talking about the same players over and over again, you get some fatigue, and it's like, oh, maybe this class isn't quite as good as we thought. And then you start again to look ahead to next year, like, oh, next year's class is way better. That's going to happen every single year. But I think it's true. I think 2024 is better than 2023, at least by a little bit.
I think, like you said, especially that front end of 2024's draft class, absolutely. Like, in terms of Caleb Williams himself, he's better than every quarterback prospect this year, hands down.
By far. It's not close.
In terms of Drake May, he's also better than every quarterback prospect this year, most likely. Marvin Harrison Jr., better than every wide receiving prospect. It's just, and Brock Bowers, I don't even want to talk about it. He's like a Kyle Pitts level prospect.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, you've got these names that I feel like 2024 in terms of transcendent talents is up
Yes.
there. Whereas
Yes.
2023 is a solid class. It's a solid class for sure. But
Yeah.
2024, you got some guys who can move the needle for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. 2023, I think, is deep. I think it's well rounded, but it doesn't touch the high end of 2024. You're talking about blue chip, elite prospects. Um, so, yeah, I think that will probably do it. Do you have any final thoughts, any closing things you want to mention before we kind of get out of here?
It's just like I said, try to. I always tell people to temper their expectations just a little bit, just because I feel like we always put on these rose-colored glasses for rookies.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're infinite potential until they hit the football field, until they hit the
Right.
NFL field. But at
Yeah.
the same time, like Eric said, this is a class that you want to know, and this is a class you want to get involved in. So I'm not saying sell your whole team to get involved in this draft, but if you can find some real estate in the 2024 draft without ruining your team, I would definitely try to find that.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
100% agree. All right. So that is going to do it. Thank you for sticking with us. I hope you learned a little bit about this 2024 class. You can get prepared. Maybe if you're looking, like I said at the top of the video, to kind of trade back or trade out of any of these 2023 picks and try to acquire those 2024 firsts. But yeah, thank you for watching. Do all that good YouTube stuff for us. We really appreciate it. If you could leave a like if you enjoyed the video, if you could hit subscribe so that you see all of our upcoming content. We're jumping right back into 2023 stuff, 2023 mocks as soon as the NFL draft hits. We'll be doing coverage, I think, of each day of the 2023 NFL draft, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so as that happens, we'll be doing recaps and breakdowns of each one, so stick around with us for that. But yeah, what else do you have for us? I guess we gotta talk about our partnerships too.
I was about to say, I wanted to thank all of our sponsors real quick. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Give a little quick plug. Huge thanks to our sponsors over there at Dynasty Owner, over at Underdog Fantasy, and at Do Numbers. Check out those links down in the description below. Use our promo codes. Find yourselves some great deals. And yeah, honestly, if you guys made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. And as always, we love you. And we will catch you in the next one very soon. And yeah, looking forward to this draft.
Let's go.
Hell yeah. Peace.
Peace.